Yes.
Way to go, Ryan. Can you do it again?
Yes.
Awesome. You see, there's always something special wherever we go. Did you know that? Like, when was the last time you went to a restaurant and you had a really good meal? Right? Somebody introduced me to a restaurant just up number 5 a little bit, right behind the Petro gas station. I think it's Petro Canada. We've been there a couple times now, and so my regular is getting less business. They're not. But have you ever been to a restaurant where you sat there and sat there and sat there and you're wondering, is that for me, Everett?
Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Sometimes we get phone calls that we need answered. But they don't happen in a restaurant. I remember going to a restaurant and saying, what's with the service in this place? We waited 40 minutes for the waitress to show up to take our order. 40 minutes. What do you think I'm saying to myself? Yeah. We're thinking, it's time to go somewhere else. And here's a line that we sometimes say at those times. You can't get good service anymore. My dad, when he was young, and I think if he were alive today, he would be 98 years old. But when he was 14, he went to work at a restaurant. And every time we went into a restaurant together when he got older, he was 80. Isaac, how are you? Every time we went into a restaurant, he would say to the waitress or the waiter, he'd say, do you know what tips means? And without question, they all did the same thing. What? Do you know what tips means? They go, I don't know. What does it mean? And he would say this every time. He would go with the letters of TIPS, T-I-P-S, to ensure prompt service. Have you ever heard that before? I never heard it either. My dad was an old guy. You think I'm old? He was old. He was old before he hit 50. But that's another story. But he would do that every time because, you know, you go to a restaurant and sometimes you don't get good service. I go to Swiss Chalet on Queenston Road in Hamilton all the time, and the waitresses fight to get my table. They do. Because I only ask for one thing out of them, and that's the fries better be hot. And they know it. And they will not let the kitchen staff put the fries on my plate. They will stand there, and the chicken's getting colder, but they're waiting for the fresh load of fries that comes out of the fryer. Then they pile it on, and then they take it out to me with a smile, because they know I live by tips to ensure prompt service. They know they're going to get a good tip. Do you know who gives the worst tips in the industry? Guess who gives the worst tips in restaurants? Take a guess. Somebody say something. No. Who, people, what people give the worst tips?
Wait staff.
Doctors.
Pardon?
Wait staff.
Really?
Yes.
What do you say, Everett? Is that you?
Doctors and dentists.
Doctors and dentists. That's interesting. Paul, it's not accountants. You ready? It's ministers. Do you know why? It's the only time a minister can complain and get away with it. There's been research in that area. And so I go beyond. I remember going in for lunch one day with somebody, and when we got there, they said, well, I'm on a special diet, I can't eat anything off of this menu. I said, oh, that's fine. And I said to the girl, I said, I will have a chocolate milkshake. Now, this place made milkshakes. They didn't take it out of a carton or whatever. And I'm there, and I had that. So the bill came to $5.73. I remember it still today. $5.73 for the whole bill because the person with me didn't have anything to eat. Well, I have to correct that. They did have something to eat. They brought it with them, and it was in their bag. I felt like an idiot. Here you are in a restaurant, and you're eating your own food. Anyhow, I tipped them 60% because she was good. But you know, sometimes it doesn't happen in our lives. A lot of things don't happen that way. And culture has changed with us. And I wrote this down. People just don't care about giving good service. You know what owners do? Owners go beyond. They always go beyond. And they really do, because they want to get repeat. They want to get repeat business. And the unfortunate thing is, if somebody gets older and they decide they want to retire from the business, and the business was going great, and so they sell it to somebody else, and the people came in and said, well, where's George? Well, he retired. We bought it off him. Oh, you're probably not going to give me the same service that he gave. See, that's how this world's changed. Can't get that from McDonald's. It's the same owner. Can't get it from Wendy's. It's the same owner. You don't get it from Tim Hortons because somebody else owns it and somebody else is in some other country and they don't care. We got a new vacuum here at the church. I bought one for Deborah at Christmas time, and she still never used it, and I'm going to try to get her to figure out how to use it next week when she's back. And I used it and couldn't believe how good it was, so I suggested to the board that we needed a new, really good vacuum that does. And if you go around here and look at the carpet, this is probably as good as it's been since Cheryl left. Cheryl used to do all that. And so I went into the place where I always go for stuff. It's called Chadwick and Hacks. Chadwick's and Hacks. It's on Fennel at Upper Sherman in Hamilton. And everything is had gone back to the factory, and it was fixed and then put up for sale again. So I went in there and I got one. And I brought it here, and I went 6 by 6, and I went up and down 6 by 6 square out in the foyer, and it filled the canister. Ooh, yeah. I thought, this is great. So James used it this morning, and he had to empty it 3 times. That's how amazing this vacuum is, right? Well, somebody was using it a few weeks ago, and I don't know who it was, but when I went to use it, it would start and stop, start and stop, and start and stop. So I decided to take it. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. I took it apart as much as I knew, and I took it up to Chadwick and Hacks. And I walked in, I said, I don't know what the problem is, but can you tell me what's wrong with it and how to fix it, and then I don't have to come back. Never guess what happened. Mr. Chadwick came out of his office, took it out of the girl's hands and said, I'll fix it. So he goes out back and he gets a compressor out and he blows it through and he hands it back. He says, there, it's fixed. I said, what'd you do? And he told me. I said, thank you. The owner. The girl knew what was wrong and she tried to fix it, but he came out and he fixed it. Now, is that service? It really is. But you know, maybe it's our perception of what that is. Nobody can replace anybody. But maybe we have to change. We have to think, do we deserve good service? Or maybe, do we think we have earned it? Let's listen to our scripture this morning. Also, a dispute arose among the disciples as they said to themselves, which of us is the greatest? Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over us, and those who exercise authority over us call themselves benefactors. In other words, you're lucky I'm doing this for you. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. You are those who have stood by me in my travels. And I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one on me. And so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom and sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel, I will call you to do what you need to do. You see, you know when he's saying this? He's saying this just after he washed their feet. Who is serving? You know, Jesus, his whole ministry was serving. And in this last hour or so that he was with the disciples, he tried to tell them everything he could. And he tried by action. When I first was taking educational courses, they told me there are 3 things about teaching someone. You tell them, you show them, and you let them do it. And they'll never forget it. You probably had that when you were learning how to play the guitar. Yeah. Everything we do, we learn that way. We hear about it, we see it, and we do it. My dad tried to teach me how to build a staircase, and he did it, most of it, and I just had to do the grunt work, and I never learned how to do it. Never learned how to lay it out, never learned how to figure out how many steps go in a rise, 8 feet, 3 inches. I never learned any of that stuff because he told me, he showed me, and I never got to do it. Something was missing. And it's the same when we think about who's serving and who's not. At one time, church was like that. You'd hang out a banner and everybody would come. I remember when I first got in ministry. Does anybody know what year I first started preaching? Did I ever tell you? 1967. That's a long time ago. I was 18, my first sermon. It was in the newspaper on the Sunday before, or the Saturday before I preached. And my mother kept the notice. When she passed away, we found it in her stuff. I've got it today. But I remember that sermon. It wasn't the best thing that had ever come out of my mouth. I would have been better off telling them what had happened to me. But see, the thing is, which one are we? Are we the one that likes to get served, or are we ones that serve? Do we have ministry? You know, when I first started ministry, they told me, they said, just show up. Everybody will come, just show up. And they did. When I was in the church in Saskatchewan, my first church in Saskatchewan, well, my first church was in Saskatchewan. And every Sunday morning I'd be there, and they'd just come. And they'd come. And in the middle of winter, they would come. They didn't care how much snow or how much wind or how much cold. They would just come in their cars, and they always had big cars because they figured that the big cars could go down the road a lot easier and slipping and sliding and all that stuff, and they could get to church and anywhere else they wanted to with a big car. They would come there, and they would leave their cars sitting out in front of the church running. They didn't want to shut them off in case it wouldn't start because it was 35 below outside. Fahrenheit. What is the equivalent? 40 and 40 are the same? Yeah, 40 and 40. The day that we moved into the parsonage in Saskatchewan, it was 35 below, and we took all our coats off and all our hats because we were too warm. Dry cold. And we were sweating. Because we wanted to get it done, right? And everybody at the church showed up to help. That's service. It really is. Unfortunately, the concept of service is now forgotten because of the non-Christian worldview. You ever heard what a Christian worldview is? Anybody ever heard that term? A Christian worldview is this. It is how we perceive the world knowing what we know about Christ and God. What we know about Christ and God comes through us, and we get a view of the world through that periscope. The world doesn't do that anymore. It did way back then, but it doesn't anymore. I used to write articles before I came here, and I used to put this: it's not your grandparents' church anymore. Come and join us. It's not your grandparents' church anymore. You see, we're here to serve those who don't know Jesus. We're called to. He said, come and I'll teach you. I'll show you. I'll send you out and give you some practice. And then you can come back and tell me how you did. And then I'll tell you a little bit more, and you can go out and do it again, and come back, and I'll teach you a little more, and then I'll send you out and you do it again. And now he's ready to send the disciples out and say, I'm not here anymore. See you guys. And they got all upset. Because they didn't figure it was ever going to happen. However, never put people's feelings over the truth. That's the worldview that we need. The Christian worldview is that. Never put people's feelings over truth. Just because the world thinks it's right. Now this line, write this down if you got a pen out. Just because the world says it's right doesn't make it right. That's what happened in Germany during the war. The Nazis said, this is how it is. Wait a minute, they were based on Christian stuff? Really? 6 million Jews? You see, when we get together, just like they did, they thought it was a great meal with great conversation. But then they started talking about, I wonder who's the greatest here? What do you think, Peter? John, what do you think? You know, you're always with Jesus. What do you think? Who do you think is the greatest in this group of 12? Who's the greatest? Come on. Well, I've got to be because I do this and I do this and I do this. But, well, yeah, Peter, you do that and that and that. But I think I'm the greatest. And they had a disagreement. And they were talking about this. And all of a sudden Jesus pipes up and he says something. Let the greatest here be your servant. Whoa, wait a minute. That's not what I think of when I think of being the greatest. The greatest is the one that stands up. I remember being in the military, and the first thing I learned is, whatever the officer says, you do. And you don't ask. You just do it. And I was in Camp Borden in the middle of winter. It was like 25 below, and we were told that we were going on winter maneuvers, and we got on all the polar bears equipment, and we went up there, and they said, okay, everybody, before we get into these, just lay down here in the snow and just wait for orders. We laid there for 3 hours. And I got frostbite across my chest. And it still affects me today. obey orders. But then I became an officer. And the whole thing changed. I figured, okay, I'm here. And you probably would think the same thing. You know, I made it to the top. I had somebody last week who was in the cadet corps that I was in. He asked me, what rank did I get? That's 50 years ago. 52 years ago. Maybe 53. But what I learned was this. Never ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. The disciples hadn't figured that part out. Really had. It seems that every time I book a flight on Allegiant Air, they give me a better seat. Good service. First time I got on there, I was in the middle seat right at the back of the bus. And I don't know if you know anything about being on the back of the bus. And some of you do. Being back on the bus, it's a little noisier than when you sit at the front. At the front, all you hear is the air going by. When you get to the back, you hear the engines going. Right, Bernie? Most times. Unless you're going Air Canada, which I don't go. But it started off that I was at the back of the bus sitting in the middle seat. And the middle seat is the worst seat of all. You got somebody here who hasn't had a bath in 3 days, and you have another person here that falls asleep and leans on you all through the 2.5-hour flight. It's terrible. I remember being in the center seat, and there was the emergency exit row was empty. And I said to the stewardess, any chance of moving up there? Yeah, go ahead. Do it before somebody else does. Okay, go. Went right out of that center seat, and I was sitting there with 3 seats to myself. And I put the armrests up, and I lay back, and I fall asleep for 2 hours. It was wonderful. The next time I go on, I'm in an aisle seat. Really? That's not bad, because on an aisle seat, you can put your feet out after they take the cart by, of course. You have to wait for the cart to go by. And you put your feet out, and you just relax. That was nice, too. The next time I went, I was on a window seat. And I went from row 20, what row did I say? 25. I went to 21. And then I went to 19 the next time I was at a window seat. Again. And the next flight that I booked, I didn't pay for the seat. You know, you have to pay for seat. If you want a good seat, you have to pay for it. Did you know that? You know? I don't pay for it. I just get what I get. And you know what? I got another window seat. Row 17. Next time I go, I'm looking for 15. And then down in the States, they have this thing called TPA, or TSA, Transportation Safety Association, PRE, pre-approved. You show up there and they say, don't take your shoes off, don't take your belt off, don't take your change out of your pocket, don't take your keys out, just walk through. So I walk through. My bag comes through and I grab my bag and away I go. I don't have to stand there like this. You ever do that? You ever get on a plane and they say, okay, stand in the middle of this machine, put your hands up, put your feet on those marks, and put your hands up like this. I said, no, I'm going to play cowboys and Indians. They didn't like it. But there are things, because we do things in the way we do things, because they're the way Jesus said. The one who thinks the best needs to be a servant. The last story I have is this. There was a pastor who was standing talking to a group of people before the service one Sunday. And they're just talking, having small talk, and everything's going good. And all of a sudden, one of the ladies looks down and sees this really large cobweb in the corner by the outside window. And it's a large cobweb. And she goes, there it goes again. Ken, this is about you. Okay? And she said, huh? Caretaker missed another one. When is he going to do his job? Jesus said, serve. Wash feet. Conversation got back to its normal conversation. Everybody's talking. And the pastor took a few steps over and went like this. And knocked the cobweb down. Came back to the conversation. Nobody said a word. Everybody saw it, but nobody said a word. Next week, that person came in to the office and said, you just showed me something I needed to see. What a servant. Even a little thing like that. So the rest of us just stood there and talked about it. But you went over and you did something so insignificant. But you taught us so much by showing us. And now we'll do the same. You see, Jesus was telling them to serve. The greatest among you will be your servant. For he was our servant. This morning as I was going through this, I got the final line for today. Because it's for all of us. Now what are we going to do about it? You see, this is about us. Do we go into the restaurant and think we deserve or earned good service? Or do we have to realize that sometimes those people who are servers are there because it's the only job they can get and it's the only money they get? You know they don't get $15 an hour, did you know that? Most people don't realize that. When I go into Swish LA, we always ask at the desk, is Maria in? Yeah, she's in. Maria, please. So we go sit down, and she comes over. We've got to know her. It's been 20 years since we first met her. She comes over. She emails me all the time, and she gives me a hug. Good to see you. She doesn't have to. Because we've learned to love each other. We clean the table off, or, you know, everybody's got dishes all around, and they come and they have to pick it all up and everything. We stack it all up. We scrape the plates off. We do all that stuff for the bus boys we have never even met. So now, what are you going to do with what you just heard? Jesus gave the example. He told them, he showed them, and now it's our turn to do it. I want you to go out somewhere this week, and I want you to just go out and do it. Be the servant. Forget about being the important one in the building. Just serve. Because in doing so, our Christian worldview will be seen by the world out there who has no idea what a Christian worldview is. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the words that you have given to us and the words that your Son said to his disciples. That means indirectly you've said them to us. So we want to go out into this world and we want to show them that Jesus is not only real, but he showed us how to be a servant. From today on, we want to be that servant. We don't want to look at ourselves as if we're the most important person in the room, because we're not. We're your servants wherever you place us. And where you plant us is where we will be the servant of all. Thank you for these words. Thank you for showing us. And thank you for the opportunity that we can do it as well. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Robin. Please rise and let's sing our next hymn, Open the Eyes of My Heart.